In the Islamic tradition, there are various merits and virtues that are given to silence, and there are many prophetic traditions from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in this regard. Of course, various other sects and philosophies, such as Buddhists, Stoics, and Christians, and many more, would have a lot to say about silence and its virtues. But there are certain pearls of wisdom from the Islamic tradition that can be beneficial for the non-Muslim and the Muslim alike. One of these statements of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that Man samata naja, the one who stays silent attains salvation. That is because silence can be used to prevent one from saying something harmful, saying something rude or offensive, saying something which has no benefit to a person in this world or in the spiritual realm. Furthermore, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was reported as having said that the one who believes in God and the last day should either speak good or remain silent. In other words, if one does not have something good to say, he should keep his mouth shut. It not only reflects the need to speak good and to act towards good and to bring people towards good, but also to avoid reckless and obscene talk. There are different categories, of course, of talk which may be considered bad or immoral. There's, of course, obscene language that one can use, foul language, but there's also an interesting category which is useless talk, talking about things which have no benefit to oneself. As per another tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that from the goodness of a man's religion, min husni islam al-mar'i an yatruka ma la ya'nihi, that he leaves that which does not concern him. This is because oftentimes people will waste their time away in things which are not relevant to them, and so will end up ignoring those tasks or those things which have more of a benefit towards them. This isn't a self-improvement video per se, but the point of wisdom really to be taken here is that one should engage in those things which are beneficial to oneself, whether it be a spiritual thing, a mental thing, or a physical thing, and not to bother with those things which will not bring one's benefit. And this does have very interesting applications. There can be times where not only is it the case that sometimes you could be doing something good, but you're distracted by something which isn't good, quite self-evidently, but there can also be the case that you may be doing something good per se, but there's something else that you need to be doing right now which requires more of your attention and which is more urgent, but you're putting it off because of this other good thing, let's say. An example of this may be that perhaps you're watching a lot of educational videos, or you're watching, a lot of perhaps good content on YouTube or anywhere else, but you're ignoring other things that you should be doing in the real world. For example, you're ignoring that book you have to read, or just another task you may have to do, spending time with other people, for example, or socializing. Or for example, if you have a task at work that you have to do, you may procrastinate in it by starting another task and ignoring it altogether. The Mohammedan insight here then is that focus on those things primarily which are the most concern to you, and leave those things which have the least concern for you. Hence, the way that silence is to be employed here is to refrain from talking about those things which have no benefit to oneself, and engage in talk about that which will benefit oneself and which has good in it. Furthermore, there are many cases where sometimes one says something that he later on regrets. Man's tongue is very fast in uttering obscenities, and only later does his mind realize the gravity of what he has said, but by then it is too late. Sometimes the wounds that are left by words are greater than the wounds that are left by the striking of hands and the smacking of fists. In such a case then, it must be noted that one should avoid engaging in foul talk towards other people. Rather, one should engage in sincere advice and sincere discussion with other people. And it is not befitting for a person to engage in such foul talk such that he disheartens another person or hurts another person's feelings. Of course, unfortunately, gossiping and backbiting are very much part of the human condition. Some have suggested that this function of gossiping evolved, as a byproduct sort of our greater communication, our greater cooperation as a species that allowed us to flourish so much. Yet, of course, the side effect of all of this, which is quite negative, is that it can create low trust between individuals. Because one day you're talking to a person, the next day he talks behind your back. Hence, many of the great philosophical and religious traditions of the world, including the Islamic tradition, but including the various others, have sought to advise man against this, to build his trust with his neighbour and with his society, and to build greater cooperation by avoiding unnecessary talk about each other behind each other's backs. As such, silence becomes necessary then to avoid diminishing the trust of a society and to preserve each other's secrets, covering each other's secrets and not just back talking everybody behind them when they think that they aren't being talked about. Hence, we can see in the Islamic tradition the importance of silence, not only as a tool of avoiding that which may be bad or immoral, but also as a tool to help us direct ourselves to that which is better or that which is more beneficial for us.